In 1975, Genesis was on life support. Their visionary frontman, Peter Gabriel, had just quit. The band was saddled with a debt of nearly £500,000, and the music world was already writing their obituary. The idea that their drummer, a guy who didn't even want to be a singer, could save them was worse than a long shot. It was unthinkable. This is the story of how Phil Collins, the reluctant hero, stepped out from behind the drums, not to save Genesis, but to launch them into the stratosphere. It's a story about a band on the brink and a personal test one man had to face to redefine a legacy. To get why this was such a crisis, you have to understand what Genesis was losing. By the mid-1970s, the band was a giant in the world of progressive rock. They were famous for their complex music, ambitious albums, and above all, the magnetic, theatrical force that was Peter Gabriel. Gabriel wasn't just a singer, he was a storyteller who wore bizarre costumes and acted out surreal narratives on stage. For most people, Peter Gabriel was Genesis. But behind the scenes, things were falling apart. The tour for the epic double album, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, had been a brutal grind. Tensions were running high, and Gabriel felt isolated and creatively suffocated. After playing his last show with the band in May of 1975, he made it official that August he was leaving Genesis. The music press had a field day, predicting the band's immediate collapse. They were a ship without a captain, sinking fast. The remaining members, Tony Banks, Mike Rutherford, Steve Hackett, and Phil Collins, faced a choice: let the dream die, or try to sail on without their charismatic leader. For them, it wasn't even a question. They were determined to prove Genesis was more than just one person. The only problem was how. The band regrouped in a London basement to figure out the next move. While Banks and Rutherford were the main songwriters, that hole at the front of the stage was a massive problem. Collins even suggested they just carry on as an instrumental group, but the others weren't having it. So they started the often humiliating process of finding a new singer. They put out an anonymous ad in the music paper Melody Maker looking for a singer for a Genesis-type group. They were flooded with around 400 replies, and almost all of them were wrong. Hopefuls sent in photos of themselves in masks and weird outfits, trying way too hard to be the next Peter Gabriel. It was a long, frustrating, and totally fruitless process. Back in the rehearsal room, it was Phil Collins who patiently taught the vocal parts to every single applicant. One by one, they'd come in, and one by one, they'd be sent away. None of them felt right. The band had already started recording the instrumental tracks for the next album, still with no clue who was going to sing on them. The pressure was on. The answer, as it so often is, was right there in the room the whole time. There was one particular song, Squonk, that nobody could seem to nail. It needed a powerful, dynamic vocal. Fed up after yet another failed audition, Phil Collins grabbed the mic to show the next guy how it was supposed to sound. And in that moment, everything changed. As his voice filled the studio, powerful, emotional, and perfectly suited to the song, the other guys just looked at each other. They finally realized their impossible search was over. The perfect singer for Genesis was their drummer. Collins, however, was horrified. I always wanted the most respectable part in the group, he later said, which was, of course, the drummer. He saw the singer as the cheapest gig in the band, someone who just had to wiggle their bum at the front of the stage. He was a musician, a player. He had zero desire to be a frontman, but the band was out of options. With a lot of persuasion, he reluctantly agreed to sing on the rest of the album. The witty drummer from West London was about to be shoved into the spotlight, whether he liked it or not. With Collins now hesitantly installed as a new singer, the band went back to the studio in October 1975 to finish the album that would decide their fate. Right away, the vibe was different. Without Gabriel's intense presence, the songwriting felt more democratic and a lot less tense. In fact, after the difficult sessions for The Lamb, the new album, A Trick of the Tail, came together incredibly fast, completed in just a few weeks. The music was still 100% Genesis, full of beautiful, intricate playing, but something had shifted. Tracks like the powerful Dance on a Volcano and the delicate Entangled had a fresh energy, and Collins' vocals were a revelation. He wasn't trying to copy Peter Gabriel. His voice was cleaner, more direct, and it just worked. For Collins, it was an enormous challenge. He was now doing two jobs, delivering his famously complex and powerful drumming, all while stepping into a role he never asked for. He wasn't just defining his own future, he was defining the future of the entire band. When Peter Gabriel himself heard the finished album the following spring, he was blown away, admitting they had proven they could do it without him. Recording the album was one thing, but playing it live, that was a whole other headache. How could Phil Collins possibly sing lead and play Genesis's incredibly demanding drum parts at the same time? The idea of him just singing from behind the kit for 2 hours was a non-starter. It would be boring. Collins agreed to be the frontman for the tour on one condition: they had to find a second drummer he trusted. He knew the perfect guy, Bill Bruford, the legendary drummer from Yes and King Crimson, who played in a side project with him called Brand X. Bruford agreed to join the tour, which freed up Collins to finally step out front. On March 26, 1976, in London, Ontario, Canada, Genesis walked on stage with Collins as their frontman for the very first time. He was visibly nervous, clinging to the mic stand like a life raft, but his natural, down-to-earth charm immediately won the crowd over. Where Gabriel was a mysterious character, Collins was just a regular guy. He talked to the audience and built an easy rapport. Then, during the instrumental breaks, he'd jump onto a second drum kit and play alongside Bruford. This created this spectacular double drumming that would become an iconic part of the live show. The tour was a massive success, proving that Genesis could absolutely deliver. When A Trick of the Tail was released in February 1976, it blew all the negative predictions out of the water. Critics were impressed, and the album was a commercial smash. It hit number 3 in the UK charts, and more importantly, broke the band in the US, climbing to number 31 on the Billboard 200. It went gold in both countries, wiped out their debt, and silenced the doubters for good. The success was a massive vindication. It proved that Banks and Rutherford were a world-class songwriting team. It proved the band was more than just its frontman, and most of all, it proved that Phil Collins, the guy who never wanted a job, had more than enough talent and charisma to lead Genesis into a brilliant new era. This was a moment that changed everything. Collins grew in confidence as a singer and songwriter, unlocking a more direct sound that would eventually propel the band from theaters to stadiums with huge albums like Duke and later on Invisible Touch. The drummer, who was once hidden in the back, had just taken his first step toward becoming one of the biggest stars in the world. Most bands don't survive losing a legendary frontman, but in 1975, Genesis stared into that abyss and came out stronger on the other side. The comeback wasn't some grand, calculated plan. It was a reluctant, last-ditch effort born out of desperation. Phil Collins didn't seize the spotlight. It was forced upon him. But by rising to that challenge, he didn't just save the band from extinction. He unknowingly launched his own journey to superstardom and created a whole new legacy for Genesis, ensuring their story was far from over. If you want to hear some more Genesis, check out my review of Nursery Crimes, which is appearing on the screen right now. I did it a few years ago when it celebrated an anniversary. Thanks for watching. Please like this video. It helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe if you're not already. I do rock and metal reviews, rankings, and more. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.